with Geno Smith being hurt, could Kenny Pickett be an upgrade for this offense? Obviously, it's been a bad offense all year. I don't know if I'm going to make that prediction. I think there's a lot more wrong with this offense than just Geno Smith. But Kenny Pickett came out, gave him a little bit of life, a little bit of juice. I just wonder if maybe the Raiders will have a little more pep in their step going forward. It's a Kenny Pickett revenge game in Week 15 against the Philadelphia Eagles.
I am sure that the Philadelphia Eagles are shaking in their boots at the thought of going up against former franchise quarterback Kenny Pickett.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Week 15 waiver wire ads. Which players should you be picking up for the fantasy football playoffs? Theo Greminger, Joe Dolan, and Tom Brawley on Fantasy Football Daily here on the Fantasy Points Podcast Network. Let's talk about Blake Corum. Is Blake Corum the running back you should be picking up? He's kind of moved from being a handcuff into very much the handcuff plus territory. My question for you, Tom, is his strong play going to warrant him cutting even more into Kyren Williams' workload? And would you be comfortable enough just to stick him into your flex spot in a big, important playoff Week 15?
I don't think he's going to continue to cut into Kyren's workload. I think we've seen him. We're basically at a point where they're rotating every other series. So he's gotten to like that 40 to 50% of the work in this backfield. I don't think we're going to see it change much in the final weeks of the season, but he's playing well enough. He's he's more effective runner in recent weeks over Kyren Williams. So it's also kind of worked out pretty well here with a couple. They had a lopsided victory this past week. Schedule does get a little tougher against the Lions and Seahawks the next 2 weeks, but they do get to finish against the Falcons in Week 17 of the fantasy finals. So I could definitely see in Week 17 that he could be somebody that you could plug in to your flex spot, and maybe you'll get a 2-touchdown performance like he did this past week. But he's certainly rising up the ranks here. One of the elite handcuff options here. We really haven't seen Jarquez Hunter at all behind him. So if anything would happen to Kyren Williams, we've seen Sean McVay in years past really lean into his backs, give them bell cow usage. And if Kyren Williams would miss a game or two in the final weeks of the season, we could see Blake Corum and arguably the NFL's best offenses here. They're putting up 30 points, seemingly just about every week here. So you want that. You want to have pieces of that backfield, and Corum has certainly carved out a pretty big role with a lot of potential if something happens to Williams.
And Joe, 209 rushing yards over his last 2 games played on only 19 carries, 3 rushing touchdowns. Like Tom said, it's arguably the league's best offense, and he scored 14 points in Week 13, 26 in Week 14. This week they face off against the Lions defense that was just, they've been pretty generous lately. Green Bay had their way. Dallas put up 30 points in that one. Could this be another week where we see Blake Corum just get to somewhere in that 12 to 14 point range?
I would think so, and I believe, Theo, that Blake Corum is one of those not in my league, bro, guys for us, because we've been telling people to pick him up for weeks, but we've been telling people to pick him up as somebody with contingent upside, right? Well, maybe he's got enough upside alone just to be in your flex on a week-to-week basis. I think you could argue he looks better than Kyren Williams, or at least just as good as Kyren Williams. Blake Corum is kind of like, and Kyren Williams are kind of doing the Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet thing if Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet were good. And that is that the Rams are humming along right now. They're running a ton of plays. This is absolutely something that looks sustainable to me.
So we had the New York Giants on bye week. We had 4 teams on bye this past week. What does this New York Giants backfield look like coming out of it? Tom, how excited are you about Devin Singletary heading into the fantasy football playoffs?
I think he should be picked up this week. They're coming off of a bye. The last time we saw them, Tyrone Tracy took a nasty-looking hit in the backfield, injured his hip a little bit, took a shot to the head area. It doesn't seem like this is a long-term issue, but he has dealt with an injury earlier this season as well. So This is a team that's kind of just playing out the strings. So if he's like not close to 100% by the end of this week, I could see them sitting him down and not a whole lot of pressure behind Devin Singletary. He could get all the touches in this backfield. I do think we'll probably see Tracy play this week, but and I think we'll go back to kind of that 50-50 split that we've kind of seen. It's tilted a little bit more towards Tracy, but Singletary, played well against the Patriots, and he's played well in general over the last month. So I don't think he's going to be going into lineups if Tracy does play, but he still is one of these guys. It's a pretty thin waiver wire. He should be picked up this week just in case the Giants err on the side of caution with a young player who is part of their future. And they've already gotten a pretty good look at him last year, so they don't really need to see a lot more from him. So just on that case that they're like, let's hold him out for another week, and Singletary gets most of the work in this backfield.
Yeah, and like he's ran pretty pure with the touchdown scoring. So he had the 2 touchdowns against Green Bay, had another touchdown against New England. But Joe, we now have 3 out of his last 4 games with double-digit PPR points, including a 19-pointer and a 17-pointer. Your thoughts on Singletary here? Do you agree with Tom? Do you think we could see sort of the hierarchy change here? Tracy already banged up. They've stressed that it's not that serious, these injuries, but you never know. Teams don't necessarily have to be forthright. Let's say Tracy doesn't practice on Monday. What would be your thoughts on Singletary at that point?
It would be as an RB2, and also let's look at the fact that he's going up against a Washington defense that just quit against 9 and the Vikings. So that's a good matchup as well. Otherwise, if Tyrone Tracy does go, I don't think you're putting Devin Singletary in a lineup. But one thing to keep in mind, they didn't call any designed runs for Jackson Dart. So that means potentially more designed runs for the running backs in this backfield. So if they want to protect Jackson Dart, they could decide to work in both of these running backs a little bit more liberally. RB2 if Tyrone Tracy doesn't play.
They do have matchups against Minnesota and Las Vegas too in weeks 16 and 17. So those are, theoretically games that they should, potentially be leading, or at least like a neutral game script. So maybe it does tilt a little bit more towards the running backs. We've seen them in some scripts where they're kind of chasing points with their awful record. So the last 3 weeks, they should be in more competitive games.
Vegas and New York are right now number 1 and number 2 if the NFL draft were drafting today. That game could be a lot of conspiracy theorists are going to be out there with some takes on how that game would look if they remain at the 1 and the 2. Very good call on Jackson Dart there, Joe. Got to protect your franchise quarterback there, especially with this top pick coming up, and then you get Cam Scatterbo back, you get Malik Neighbors back. This could be sort of a positive offseason for the Giants. Let's talk about Jaylen Wright. Jaylen Wright was a player that we were very enthusiastic about last season heading into the 2024 season as sort of a upper level handcuff, potentially a handcuff plus behind Devon Achane. Wright had all the prerequisites we wanted to see with the speed, the athleticism, 4th round pick in the NFL draft. Never sort of happened. Then this year, we sort of thought that this would be an Ollie Gordon takeover. But yesterday, when we saw Devon Achane leave the game, and a big shout out to Devon Achane, putting up still like on only 8 touches, he's still going to finish as an RB1 this week with 17.5 points. We find out later Devon Achane leaves with a rib injury, came back. Mike McDaniel said he could have been put back in an emergency, but Jaylen Wright finished the game, finished it well. Gordon scored a touchdown, but Jaylen Wright still gave you 24 carries for 107 rushing yards and a score. Also had 3 targets, didn't catch any of them. But what would be your enthusiasm level for adding Jaylen Wright? And what would be his value if Devon Achane is unable to go this week in week 15? Let's start out with you on this one, Joe.
Yeah, so the 100 yards, that was one of the games that I can only watch 6 at once in my office. First world problem, right? I can only watch 6 games at once. That was one of the games I relegated when I was doing my game day show on Sirius XM. So I was a little bit surprised when I looked up at the box score at the end of the game and saw that Jaylen Wright had over 100 rushing yards in that game. I know our guy Brett Whitefield likes to bag on him for his lack of vision. But I guess the Jets holes were big enough that he could even see through those. they have a very interesting matchup here coming up in week number 15 with the Stees. And all of a sudden, this is a game that's an important game from a playoff picture perspective. Miami's not done in the playoff picture right now, unbelievably. So from a playoff perspective, this is a big one. And remember, Buffalo ran all over Pittsburgh last week. Cincinnati couldn't do it this week, but Buffalo ran all over them 2 weeks ago. This absolutely would be a major pickup. The problem is it's a Monday night football game. Yeah. And if Devon Achane is a game time decision, you might not be able to stomach putting Jaylen Wright in your lineup unless we have really good information about Achane's availability or lack thereof heading into Monday.
Yeah, Tom, anything to add on the Jaylen Wright situation?
Yeah, I get the impression that Achane's probably going to play this week. It seemed like he could have come back into that game on Sunday in week 14. They were up by multiple scores. Brady Cook was at quarterback for the Jets, not exactly a threat to make a comeback in that game. So I think they kind of played a little close to the vest and made him sit out and get a little healthy. So I do think he will play, but it was a little bit of a surprise. I'm tracking this all the time. I thought Ollie Gordon would be the guy that kind of stepped up into that lead runner role, but they kept Ollie Gordon kind of in his specific role as kind of the short yardage guy, goal line back, and elevated Jaylen Wright into Devon Achane's role. So a little bit of a surprise there. But if I'm Devon Achane, man, he's been, as you said, RB1 week with barely playing on Sunday. He's been awesome down the stretch here, and this running game is really playing at a very high level over the last month. So if I'm an Achane owner, I am protecting my asset. I am, using the rest of my FAAB, whatever I need to do to make sure I have Jaylen Wright for this week and for the stretch run here. So at the very least, Achane owners should be picking up Jaylen Wright this week.
Yeah, priority handcuff if there ever was one, especially with the timing of the game and the way that Achane is playing. Go and pick up some Jaylen Wright. And this time of year, guys, take a look at your opponent's FAAB. If your opponent has Devon Achane, you can go ahead and pick up Jaylen Wright just to prevent them from having that little bit of a handcuff crutch there. If you're looking to get a holiday gift, maybe for Christmas, maybe for Hanukkah, or if you want to give yourself a gift, consider the gift of fantasypoints.com. All of our subscriptions are at discounted rates right now. We are not only giving you top-notch redraft information, dynasty information, DFS information, but we have also run extremely pure this season with our gambling picks. And specifically, Tom, our anytime touchdown bets have been cashing at a major rate.
Yeah, Chris Wecht, the head of our projections team, he's been doing it the last couple of weeks, these anytime touchdowns, I think since about week 6. And since then, he's been up 53 units, return of investment of up over 31%. Some of the highlights from this past week, Tyler Shough at 13-1 odds, anytime touchdown. Jackson Hawes for the Buffalo Bills, third string tight end, more of a blocker. He was 10-1. He scored a touchdown. And Ollie Gordon, who we just talked about in that first segment, plus 550 anytime touchdown. So major hits this past week, and we've been seeing a nice return on investment, since we started doing these. So if you're part of the premium package, Chris drops those in. Game days on Thursdays in our Fantasy Points Discord. He likes to drop those in Friday as well for the Sunday games, and he'll update it on Sunday. And then Mondays he'll drop the Monday night games. So these have been cashing really, really well over the last couple of weeks, and I would recommend getting in on this package right now.
Yeah, highly recommend it. Go ahead and check out all of our discounted rates over at fantasypoints.com. And if you're looking for an edge in your fantasy playoffs, our projections, our weekly rankings are next to none. Go check it out. You're going to get access to Tom's Waiver Wire article, my Dynasty article, the Everything Report from Scott Barrett and Ryan Heath, and many, many more top-notch articles every single week over at fantasypoints.com. Joe, we talk about the tight end position, and you sort of always talk about like the how it all sort of blends together, but there's a specific edge. And you've been doing fantasy football content for a long time. Have you ever seen a defense that's this bad against the tight? I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals are a legendary defense to attack with opposing tight ends. I mean, it's almost comical at this point. So many tight ends have put up season highs in fantasy points for the entire year against this specific defense. They cannot defend the tight end position. Yesterday, we saw Dawson Knox going off in the same game that Dalton Kincaid and Jackson Hawes each catch touchdown passes. And now we have sort of a perfect storm because we have a player that we've sort of talked about all season long as a contingent upside play at the tight end position. Isaiah Likely is trending up in his usage and production. And now he faces off against this Bengals defense in week 15 of the fantasy playoffs. What's your enthusiasm level for Likely? And I know this is very early in the week, but would you rank him as like a top 8 tight end this week, top 6, just based on the matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited for him. If I've been playing the musical chairs at the tight end position all year, I am playing Isaiah Likely this week. I mean, you can make the argument that he's a better receiver right now than Mark Andrews, who just got a $30-some million contract extension from the Ravens, which also dampened some of my Likely enthusiasm. But Likely comes out and he puts up a bigger game in week number 14 against Pittsburgh with 4 catches for 25 yards and a touchdown. He was actually second on them in receiving, but behind Zay Flowers, who I actually called out as having a good matchup in my column, but I wasn't brave enough to bet any of his overs because of how awful Lamar Jackson has been. But he was second on the team in receiving. So yeah, Isaiah Likely is an instant top 12 tight end this week if you've been playing the musical chairs. Maybe you've been using Zach Ertz, by the way. So there's a guy for you. It's Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, 100%. And Tom, he not only caught a touchdown pass, but then they had the other touchdown pass that was overturned late in the game. So it could have been a bigger number. Almost like a big shout out to the referee that overturned the play, because if he would have had 2 touchdowns, would have cost a little bit more in terms of FAAB this week. The contract makes no sense. I mean, the whole thesis behind Isaiah Likely was let Mark Andrews walk this year and let Isaiah Likely, like Isaiah Likely was supposed to get this contract, resign the younger tight end, let him be the number 1 in 2026, but that's a whole nother story. Specifically for this week, do you agree with Joe? You feel confident about using Likely?
Yeah, especially if I've been playing like these PPR guys, the guys that catch you 4 passes for 40 yards. It's not too exciting. We're into the fantasy playoffs now. Maybe you're coming into a matchup where you're an underdog and you need a little bit of that higher variance, guy that might, catch 2 passes for 20 yards like Likely could, but he could also put up 4 or 5 catches and score a touchdown or 2. And he's playing well. As you said, he almost had that. He had the touchdown overturned by the refs against the Steelers this past week. Almost scored a touchdown the week before against the Bengals, had that costly fumble, kind of ruined their potential comeback in that game. So he's put together back-to-back really strong performances against AFC North defenses that have really struggled against the tight ends all season. And now he gets to go up against that Bengals defense again this week. So we've seen the Bengals, since Burrow came back here, they're putting up points. They're playing in some higher scoring games. So I do think this game between the Ravens and the Bengals, I haven't looked at the totals, but it has to be one of the higher totals on the board. And we could see a little bit of a shootout here in this game if the Ravens actually cooperate this time. That Thanksgiving game only got 14 points, but they had an opportunity. Zay Flowers had a pass interference call in that game. That game should have been even higher scoring. So maybe we get it this week in week 15.
Joe, another tight end that's out there in a lot of leagues is Colby Parkinson. Parkinson scored a touchdown in week 14, and this has been a trend. He's had a touchdown catch in 4 out of his last 5 games, and he scored 9.4 PPR points or more in 4 out of his last 5 as well. If we're chasing touchdowns, is there a better team to use a tight end on than the LA Rams?
No, and then you want to talk about totals on the slate? Well, Rams, Lions in LA on the carpet is going to be a high total. By the way, the Lions just lost Brian Branch for the season. Their star safety, he went down with an Achilles injury, so they're going to be weaker on the back end than they've already been. Colby Parkinson, I prefer Likely. But like with Tyler Higbee still on IR, Colby Parkinson's a great 1-week pick up and play type of guy. And I'm going to imagine, I don't do the DFS advice all that much. I leave that to Scott and Jake and the boys. But I think Colby Parkinson's going to be a really popular and strong DFS play this week.
Yeah, Colby Parkinson's ended up on Scott's DFS article a couple times because he's been dirt cheap. I imagine it's going to adjust a little bit, but that's a great call. Really looking to chase that game. Branch, a huge loss for the Lions. That defense, it could be in big trouble, but great for us in fantasy football. Let's pivot over to the wide receiver position. Tom, we finally saw the Luther Burden get this much larger opportunity, and it looks like this Rome Odunze injury could linger for the rest of the year. Your enthusiasm level for Luther Burden in leagues where he's still available?
Yeah, I would be looking to pick him up. He's only 17% owned in Yahoo leagues. I was kind of stunned by that. I figured with the Rome Odunze news kind of coming out late in the week, and that it was a stress fracture that could keep him out multiple weeks, that Burden would have been picked up and played this past week, but he really wasn't. So, came out in this first game without Odunze, led them in targets, receptions, and receiving yards. So he's already kind of vaulted up to that number one spot. DJ Moore has, really struggled this season. They're rotating the tight ends. So Burden is kind of the number one guy in this offense moving forward. And I think the Bears could hold out Odunze for multiple weeks here, try to get him healthy for the postseason, at least for the next week or two. So I think at the very least, he's the number one wide receiver. We need this passing game to get going a little bit. It's very reliant on the rushing attack right now with DeAndre Swift and Cobb Monongai. But if they start to dial up some of these down the field shots and get this downfield passing game going again, it's not going to be to DJ Moore. It's going to be to Luther Burden. So he's a guy that should be owned in all formats at this point if Odunze is going to miss multiple weeks for this foot fracture that he's dealing with.
Yeah, Luther Burden had more than 11 times the fantasy points of DJ Moore this week because DJ Moore scored 0.6 PPR points. Burden, we'd like to see the target volume go up a little bit, but he's such an explosive player that 6 targets, we can sort of deal with that. They did give him the manufactured rushing attempt, a no-brainer ad if he's available in your league, and we've been talking about him for weeks and weeks and weeks. Now we might get a chance to have Luther Burden in our lineups in the fantasy playoffs with a chance to have him make a big impact. Chicago lost that game, just came off the big Philly win, but now you've got Cleveland here in week 15, a chance to put up some numbers there. Week 16, Green Bay comes back to Chicago, and then week 17, a game that we've had circled for a long time, Chicago in San Francisco in week 17. That feels like a game where there could be some points in that one. Luther Burden, a no-brainer pickup. CeeDee Lamb dealing with a concussion. Joe, we talked about Ryan Flournoy earlier in the season. He's had a couple of big games, really big performance against Detroit this past week. Sort of seems like a handcuff for CeeDee Lamb. What would be your enthusiasm level for using Ryan Flournoy in a 1 week, week 15 big spot for fantasy managers? Are you throwing him in your wide receiver 3 spot, your flex spot? Sort of where are you at on Flournoy being able to have a strong game for a second consecutive week?
Yeah, it seems like Dallas drops back to pass about 60 times a game. So if CeeDee Lamb can't go, I think he's a wide receiver 3, but that's just contingent on CeeDee Lamb's availability. Now, that's a Sunday night football game, but we'll know. We'll know if CeeDee Lamb clears concussion protocol. This isn't like a hamstring injury that he's got to work out pre-game. We will know if he clears concussion protocol. Maybe more of a notice for dynasty managers to check if he's out there for them in their leagues, because obviously now I expect Dallas will try to re-sign George Pickens this offseason, but we know what the discourse is. Oh, he's a front runner, he's doing he's jogging through his routes, and Dallas might have a decision to make on him. So for dynasty managers, I think it's more of a note for them. He's a wide receiver 3 for me if CeeDee Lamb can't play this week, though.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on Flournoy. Flournoy, again, is in year 2, was a Senior Bowl participant, interesting player, and he showed that he can thrive with Dak Prescott. So, interesting player long-term. And CeeDee Lamb does benefit. He has those extra few days with coming off of a Thursday night concussion to potentially clear. Interesting one there. Tom, we finally saw Rashid Shaheed put up a big score. He had the return touchdown, also had 4 receptions, over 60 receiving yards, just looks explosive. And it's been sort of a why did they trade for him if they're not going to use him type argument. Maybe this is the game that we start seeing a ramp up for a player that we were putting in our fantasy lineups earlier this season when he was a New Orleans Saint.
Yeah, I think this is one of the few calls I did make right on my player props this week. I did see a little bit of chatter, from Mike McDonald about just getting him involved a little bit more. He's playing well. They just hadn't done a good job of getting him the ball, and we finally saw a little bit here. And Seahawks, Jackson Smith and Jigba is having a very special season here, but in the playoffs, you probably got to have a couple of different punches if you want to keep surviving through the postseason. So got to have a Shaheed step up as a number 2 wide receiver, and maybe that was the start of it this past week. He also had a big punt return touchdown, I believe it was, or maybe it was a kick return. I think it was the longest kick return touchdown of the year there. So if you're playing in any kind of formats that give you any kind of bonuses for return yards, and he does do that for the Seahawks as well, but. The problem is it's still going to be, a run heavy, not a huge pass rate over expectation team. So he's going to have to, create some big plays on, like 4 to 6 targets. But I would think Shaheed is very capable of that. We saw that in plenty of times in New Orleans and just haven't seen it a whole lot. But maybe this week 14 performance is the start of that. Gets a friendly matchup here against the Colts. Probably will be without Sauce Gardner again, so maybe he can have a little bit of success here in Week 15 against the Colts team that's kind of reeling a little bit.
Yeah, he's a fun player to sort of keep on your bench, see where this thing goes. But Shaheed does have that explosiveness, as we saw in the return, as we've seen in many games of his career, that he can take one to the house and sort of push your team over the top. One of the more explosive players in the NFL when he's in the open field. Joe, one deep name, you mentioned Dynasty League managers, Jack Bech. Jack Bech finally led Vegas in receiving yards at the wide receiver position. It's been a very, very frustrating year for him. TCU player, Senior Bowl MVP. We were looking for a lot out of him. 6 catches, 50 yards on 6 targets. Is this a sign of things to come? Are you interested in picking him up this week at all?
Not really. I mean, I'm hoping for Dynasty that things go forward for him and develop for him. The question I have is, with Geno Smith being hurt, could Kenny Pickett be an upgrade for this offense? Now, obviously, it's been a bad offense all year. I don't know if I'm going to make that prediction. I think there's a lot more wrong with this offense than just Geno Smith. But Kenny Pickett came out, gave him a little bit of life, a little bit of juice. I just wonder if maybe the Raiders will have a little more pep in their step going forward. It's a Kenny Pickett revenge game in Week 15 against the Philadelphia Eagles. So maybe that was the kind of the relationship that we needed to see develop. But I'm not interested in Jack Bech from a season-long perspective.
I am sure that the Philadelphia Eagles are shaking in their boots at the thought of going up against former franchise quarterback Kenny Pickett. All right, Tom, let's get it going. We have so many quarterback names to talk about this week. I'll sort of give us a pat on the back. You and Joe and I, we've been on Tyler Shough for a few weeks. We're starting to see Tyler Shough play very well. I think that the Saints are going to roll with Tyler Shough in 2026. He had another strong performance, and he's doing it. We're really seeing the rushing production with him. What's your enthusiasm level for Tyler Shough for the rest of the season? Is he like a top 15, top 18 quarterback rest of the way?
Yeah, I would put him in that mid QB2 range. I mean, that is one thing. I did not expect him to run as much as he has. And it's really since their Week 11 bye that something maybe has clicked, or maybe they told him just, hey, let's run a little bit more. 6 attempts in 3 straight games since their bye, 18 or more yards in each of those games. And as I was saying with Chris's anytime touchdown bets, he scored not 1, but 2. I would love to see the odds for a 2 touchdown rushing performance from Tyler Shough. So yeah, he's running a little bit. The game conditions kind of warranted that. It was a little tough to throw the ball in that game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the 3 games prior to that, he had 239 yards in 3 straight games. So he's had some success with some volume in this passing game. And if there's anything we know about Kellen Moore's offenses over the last couple of years with the Eagles and with the Cowboys and Chargers, he likes to run a lot of plays. They're getting a lot of plays off down in New Orleans. And That's really helped Tyler Shough here. So I think he's very viable if you're a Daniel Jones owner and you're looking for a little bit of help out there. Shough's only owned in 8% of leagues right now. He's widely available. Schedule is not scary at all either. Carolina's a little tougher matchup this week, but week 16, he's got the Jets. Week 17, he's got the Titans. So 2 matchups he could have a lot of success in the semifinals and the finals of your fantasy leagues.
Yeah, and Joe, 4.6340 for Tyler Shough. So he does have some wheels, and we're seeing the rush attempts. Now, it's 3 straight weeks of 6 rushing attempts or more. And that Carolina matchup, we've already seen him be successful against this defense. Against Carolina in week 10, he had 282 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm into Tyler Shough. Sometimes before the show, I go through like my own waiver wires and see who's available. Tyler Shough is still out there in a ton of leagues right now. Superflex, it's obviously he's cleaned up. But where would you be at in using him in a single QB format? Are you there where if maybe you lost Daniel Jones, like Tom said, and you're sort of scrambling, are you there in that enthusiasm level with Shough?
Enthusiastic would be the wrong word. Content might be more the better word. Here's the thing with Tyler Shough, and I'll fully admit to my own biases. Big, tall, white guy. I'm not expecting him to pull the ball on the zone read, and maybe other defenses aren't as well because the Buccaneers completely forgot he existed on that 40-yard touchdown run. So I'm surprised by how not good his wheels are, and quite frankly, I mean the designed runs as part of his game are surprising me. Why can't that continue going forward? So I'm content with him if I need him. I'm not like fired up about it, but I'm content with him if I need him.
One quarterback who it's actually going up against Tyler Shough this week, Tom, Bryce Young. Carolina entered their bye week with a ton of positive momentum. They're the biggest win, I think, of the Dave Canales era in week 13 against the LA Rams. Bryce Young had 3 passing touchdowns in that one. He also had 3 passing touchdowns in week 11 against Atlanta. Trending up, we saw Bryce Young last year end the season very well. Could we see the same for Bryce Young this year?
I hope so. It was a trend last year. He really picked up a lot of momentum. Has thrown for 3 touchdowns in 2 of his last 3 games. But all year here with this Panthers team, it's been a little bit of a yo-yo. But maybe with the bye, the really late bye here, they probably needed some rest. Maybe they come out here, got a great schedule: Saints, Buccaneers, and then the tougher matchup against the Seahawks in week 17. But we're also seeing, Jalen Coker kind of emerge. He's a guy if you're in a really deep format, maybe look at him off the waiver wire, but he's playing really well over the last month. Xavier Legette's flashed a little bit. Tet McMillan has provided some big playability. So this team is trending upward here. It's still a team that's going to rely on Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle most weeks, but maybe we can get a little bit of a shootout here against the Saints. This is maybe it has some sneaky upside here with the Saints all of a sudden being able to put up some points. But I would prefer Shough over Bryce Young, but Young certainly, he's one of these high variance type of guys. He could kill you. He could have 1 touchdown pass and 150 yards, or maybe he can have one of these 280-yard games with 3 touchdowns. So if you need a little bit more upside here in a matchup, maybe Bryce Young has it.
Joe, Tyler Shough was not the only rookie quarterback to have a really big performance in week 14. Shedeur Sanders went nuts. 364 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He had a 60-yard touchdown pass to Jerry Jeudy, and he also had a rushing score, 7-yard rushing touchdown, 4 touchdowns for Shedeur Sanders. Heading into Monday Night Football, he's the QB2 on the week to Josh Allen. Is this a quarterback that you would trust on the road in Chicago?
No, but I mean, look, and let's also throw out there that very clearly, for whatever reason, Kevin Stefanski doesn't trust him. I mean, he throws the quote-unquote game-tying touchdown, and then they take him off the field for the 2-point conversion, which I don't understand. I was listening to their broadcast because we get some live feeds of their broadcast on the SiriusXM Fantasy Football Game Day show, and we throw to them when teams are in like a red zone situation. And Nathan Zagura, who's the color commentator there, former colleague of ours at SiriusXM, he's like, man, this is what you want to see. You want to see Shedeur Sanders in this spot, playing from behind, see what kind of stones he has, I'm paraphrasing. And he goes and he throws the touchdown to potentially tie the game, and then they take him off the field. This is a 3-win football team. Like, let the kid play. He led them in rushing, which is more of an indictment of the fact that Quinshon Judkins did not have a very good game. But I just don't trust this receiving group. I mean, I like Harold Fannin quite a bit. Chicago doesn't turn the ball over. Maybe that's one thing we can hang our hats on. Chicago doesn't turn the ball over, so we could see maybe Chicago scoring a lot against this defense that just got gashed by Tony Pollard. And Shedeur has to play from behind, but I would prefer Tyler Shough this week.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on Shough. I will say that like in retrospect, them using Dylan Gabriel over Sanders looks like a terrible decision.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Certainly, Shedeur Sanders backers are victory lapping today, and if he can do it on the road in Chicago this week, the drum beats are going to get louder and louder and louder. Much like New Orleans, Sanders is going to do just enough, I think, down the stretch to make this an interesting conversation as to what they do in the NFL draft, especially with sort of a shallow quarterback pool. Very, very interesting stuff there. Tom, we saw Jayden Daniels return. Washington absolutely obliterated by Minnesota. It was 14-0 at the half, 31-0 for the game. Jayden Daniels exits the game. He had the dislocated elbow, comes back, re-aggravates the same injury. I think all three of us would say, just sit Jayden Daniels down for the rest of the season. Dan Quinn comes out and says he expects him to be back this year. I don't understand it. Protect your franchise quarterback. I would be shocked to see Jayden Daniels out there this week. What would be your enthusiasm level for Marcus Mariota against the Giants in Week 15 on the road? And as a reminder, Marcus Mariota played great against Denver. That was a 1-point loss for the Commanders. He also had a couple of solid games against Detroit, decent against Miami. Are we back to confidence level? I know this team is heading south, but Mariota has had some strong performances.
Yeah, I'd like him over like a Bryce Young type who we were talking about earlier. This team is back to full strength a little bit. We got Terry McLaurin back on the field starting in that Denver game, and he really gave the offense a lift. So he's also running a little bit. He's been able to help his fantasy production with some rushing as he tends to do. So, and as you said, their defense is kind of playing like crap. So they have the potential to be playing in some higher scoring games if their offense can cooperate a little bit. So nothing too scary about the postseason schedule here. Giants, Philly, and Dallas. So at least two really good matchups. And that Philly one, you could probably have some production in that one too. So well, the big question is what will they do with Jayden Daniels here? That was that hit. I mean, it was nothing much. I mean, he just landed on his elbow, and he was in some real pain there. So we'll see what they do. They should probably shut him down at this point. Get that draft pick a little bit better. Do whatever you can to get this team a little bit younger. But we'll see what they do. They obviously brought him back in Week 14, and I think it feels like Daniels is kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes here. He wants to get out there and play again. But good organizations tell their star players when it's time to give it up and throw the towel in. And somebody with the Commanders organization needs to have that conversation with Jayden Daniels this week.
Yeah. By the way, he needs to switch from if he's ordering the 6-inch, he needs to switch to the foot long. He's got to put some freaking weight on, man. He is skinny. Like I mean, like you said, the hit wasn't anything much, but it flew 30 yards across the field. Like, I mean, like, oh, yeah, I would be nervous about him taking hits.
The vibes are just terrible in Washington. Joe, you mentioned Zach Ertz earlier. He's done for the year.
Yep.
Jayden Daniels should be done for the year. I mean, this is, and probably a big shout out to Zach Ertz. Huge fantasy production at the tight end position, multiple seasons of his career, 35 years old. This is probably the end for him. Let's talk about Justin Fields. Tyrod Taylor, groin injury, leaves the game. Brady Cook comes in. But now you've got this window where Justin Fields has got to be in. They can't roll with Brady Cook this week. It would have to be Fields, right? Joe, which way is the situation going to go? And I will remind everyone, the last time we saw Justin Fields on an NFL field, he was quarterback 5 on the week. 2 games prior, he was quarterback 12. So despite Justin Fields having a bunch of really poor performances, he has 5 QB1 finishes this year. Where do you think this situation heads? Do you think Justin Fields can come back and be an edge pickup in the fantasy playoffs for super flex managers potentially?
Well, the receiving core is decimated. I mean, obviously, we saw Brady Cook couldn't get the ball to A.D. Mitchell. They're going against the Jacksonville Jaguars, which maybe the most underrated defense in the NFL. Maybe I have my blinders on, Tom, but I am not risking a 2 from my quarterback spot in the fantasy football playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, he can put up these monster performances, but he also has shown multiple times here. I'm looking through his game log. I mean, looks like five performances with fewer than 8 fantasy points. So this is a situation talked about a little bit here, but if you really need a lot of upside, you're a major underdog. That is the only time I would be rolling with Fields. We have, I think, some better options off the waiver wire if you can.
I have a very strong Superflex team that is looking shaky right now because I lost Daniel Jones, and my backup, like my third quarterback, was Tyrod Taylor with Justin Fields. I kept Fields rostered, so this might be a situation where I might have to use Justin Fields. And guys, talk about FAAB. My FAAB is mostly spent, as a lot of our listeners' FAAB is at this time of year. Let's talk about the Daniel Jones replacement, though. Let's talk about Riley Leonard. This is a scary situation. Indianapolis dropped to 8-5. They were sort of the talk of the NFL. Now 3 straight losses, and doesn't get easier this week against Seattle. Riley Leonard won a lot of games at Notre Dame, had a lot of mobility at Notre Dame. Do you think this could be a situation where he can provide some fantasy football utility because of his ability as a runner, or is this a situation you'd really want to avoid entirely? Tom, let's start with you on this.
If I can avoid it this week, I probably would. This is a brutal matchup against the Seahawks defense. They've been kind of, harassing every quarterback that they've gone against. But I do think maybe if you can pick them up and stash them and kind of wait a week. We do have a 49ers matchup in week 16, Jacksonville Jaguars matchup in week 17. And so those are 2 easier spots. And but I'm with you. The only way he probably gets this done and puts up relevant fantasy production, it's gonna have to be with his legs. And I was a little surprised. I think it was just 2 carries. Did score a rushing touchdown on one of those 2 carries this past week, but I thought whenever he came into the game that maybe we would see some design runs and stuff, and maybe that happens more moving forward. But he's not going to get it done through the air here, especially in this matchup against Seattle. So it's going to have to be with his legs, with his mobility, his escapability. He does work the pocket well a little bit, but his passing has always been a little, leaving us a little wanting, coming into the league. So, but at least he does have some good receivers here with Pittman and Downs and Alec Pierce. But this is one of those. I'd rather kind of stash him here for a week, and if he looks halfway decent against the Seahawks in week 15, maybe you can plug him into a lineup in week 16 or 17.
Joe, do the Indianapolis Colts make the NFL playoffs?
Wait until you see their schedule.
No.
At the Seahawks, you've got home against the 49ers, you've got home against the Jaguars, and then you're at the Texans. They are dead.
Yeah.
To borrow from Fred Flintstone. They are done.
I'm going to guess they're regretting sending a couple first-round picks to the Jets here for Sauce Gardner.
So, I mean, look, obviously they decided to go all in. They didn't anticipate Daniel Jones tearing his Achilles. But as for Riley Leonard for fantasy, let me end on this note. I'm going to predict he's our 32nd ranked quarterback this week.
Yeah, I'm going to predict he's going to be very, very low. If you want access to our rankings, subscribe to fantasypoints.com. Make sure you're checking out Tom's Waiver Wire article. A big shout out to the audience that read my Waiver Wire article. It's done for the year because those high-stakes leagues were done adding players. But Tom has everything you need covered on the Waiver Wire to help you win your fantasy league. Our projections are also going to help you as well. And just a general advice, get the roster cloggers off your roster. Add a couple of handcuff running backs and use FAAB as a weapon this week. block your opponents from getting the guys that they need. Very underrated strategy. Stick with us here at Fantasy Football Daily all week long. We've got you covered. And make sure you're checking out School of Scott with Scott Barrett and I. New podcast dropped, 2026 NFL Draft Podcast with Brett Whitefield and myself. We dropped episode number 1. We did an NFL mock draft. A lot of fun to listen to. We've got you covered on everything fantasy at Fantasy Points. We're going to help you crush your fantasy playoffs this season.